Watch out, Apple. India launches the world's cheapest tablet. It's hoping to bridge the digital divide and boost economic development. But does new technology always produce the desired result? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Taimur Nabili. Now, in a world where education is considered essential to development, technology is now regarded as the best way to deliver education. Governments around the world have different strategies to provide computing power in the classroom. And now India has announced its plan. Almost inevitably, it involves a tablet device, indeed the world's cheapest tablet, which the government says will enhance the quality of learning. But will it? Are computers really the best way to provide education? And do they have unforeseen effects too? We'll discuss that in a moment. First, Prerna Suri reports on the launch of the Akash.
It's slick, it's shiny and costs $45. Say hello to the world's cheapest computer tablet. And it's made in India.
Today, we see the beginning of a dream realized. A dream in which every student in every corner of this country will have access to technology.
Called Akash or the Sky, the tablet has taken over 4 years to develop and is targeted mostly at students. In a country where laptops range from anywhere between $400 to $1,000 and where the average income is much lower, the hope is that more people, particularly the country's youth, will have greater access to technology. Like these students. They've never used a laptop before, and for them, it's a whole new experience.
It's a great device. We can use it anywhere, anytime, and it isn't really big like a PC, so we can carry it around wherever we want.
The Akash looks and feels like any other computer tablet. It runs on an Android 2.2 operating system. You can also visit the internet if there's a Wi-Fi portal around. And it runs on about 140 hours of battery power. For $45, it's not a bad deal. In the next few months, over 100,000 such computers will be available in select universities. And if it's successful, India may even sell it commercially. But experts say the design still has a long way to go.
So the next challenge would be how to make it better. What we see right now is a resistive display, a slow processor, a sort of low memory in terms of RAM, right? So that might have an impact on the usability of this tablet.
But for now, at least, these students are happy. And for them, the sky is at their fingertips. Prerna Suri, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.
Right, to talk about the issue today, I'm joined by our guests from New Delhi, technology expert Pavan Duggal, also from Delhi, Praveen Nigam, who's CEO of Amplus Consulting, and from London, Farrukh Dondi is a writer and columnist for the Hindustan Times and various other publications. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today. Let me begin with you in London, Farrukh Dondi. From a distance, it looks like a technology story to a certain extent, but a lot of this has got to do with local politics, local strategies. Just give me your first response on what is India doing launching the world's cheapest tablet?
I think it's very good news that one can buy a tablet for $35. It used to be £100, $100 at least. And if the government is going to subsidize them and distribute them to millions of people, it will certainly mean an educational boost for a very narrow section of the top new middle classes of India.
All right.
Technology has always helped those classes, but it has done very little for, shall we say, the 95% below the poverty line, not below the poverty line, but below the educational aspirations that these new classes have in the last 20 years.
A couple of elements there. I just want to stay with you for a minute, Farrukh, and divide those two elements. First of all, the technology aspect. Second of all, the issue of whether technology actually is the best way to improve education. We'll leave that for a moment. But the technology bit, does India's government really, should it be playing a role, a financial role and a policy role in what is still very new technology and what is still very unproven technology. The tablet is not necessarily the best way to do anything, and the tablet they have launched on paper looks very inferior to what's already out there.
That's possibly so, but making it cheap and making any advance on chalk and slate or on pen and paper and making vast amounts, swaths of information, if that information is editorially any good, to millions of people is certainly a technological advance.
All right.
And I don't think that we need a tablet that can play video games, for instance, or download the latest Hollywood films. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to get make education visible.
Right.
To do something that will substitute for books and do it cheaply.
Well, we'll wait and see whether the people who use this tablet actually do use it to download films or learn. That's yet to be decided. But let me go to Delhi. Praveen Nigam, let me ask you this. Just a few years ago, the Indian government turned down the option of participating in the one laptop per child program. There are programs out there. They could have had laptops in their classrooms some time ago. Instead, they chose to go their own route with this tablet, which, as I say, still remains to be proven. Was it the right decision?
As India, as a government policy, I think education is at the top of the priority for the Indian government. And they have a good amount of funds allocated for the education programs in India. A child laptop was a policy which was declared, but it was of no use, no consequence, because it was not related to how it is going to go the education bit by providing laptop. I think this cheap tablet which we are talking about, which is being more or less 40% subsidized by the government, I think this is because India is picking up very fast on long distance learning. And I think if we have a tablet at that cost, which is highly subsidized by the government, it'll be a good move. It is a very good move from the government in terms of spreading the education to the people who deserves it and who can't afford it.
Okay, Pavan Duggal, let me put it to you then. This idea that the laptop, the tablet, general computing power in the classroom is the best way to provide an education. Let me address that for a moment, because it may be cheap, this tablet, $45 per child, but for $45 per child in rural India, you could buy an awful lot of books and you wouldn't have to provide backup technology for it. Why do we need a tablet when you could set up libraries in every town?
We have to understand this in the context of today's India. Today's India is the mobile revolution India. An India which is seeing mobile instruments, mobile communication devices being used not only by people in cities but also in rural India and in towns and villages. Now, at this time, when we are at a cusp, at a very interesting development of mobile commerce, mobile revolution in India, I think the tablet comes in as a breath of fresh air. Clearly, when India did not go the route of one laptop per child, it was having some thought process in mind. Today, yes, at $45, Akash will not be a very competitive, a very attractive proposition in terms of computing, but clearly it will be more than enough for what computing is required in the educational classrooms of India.
But
and
again,
I think
sorry,
that's
so
what
let me interrupt you for a second. I mean, I take on board what you're saying, but surely you are just speaking the language of consumerism and modern technology. My question was, is the educational material much more easily and much more cheaply delivered through traditional means? Why do we have to go this new technology route?
Well, the traditional routes have always been available, but once technology allows a far more expeditious and far more efficient way of delivering knowledge and education, I think there's no harm in taking that on board as well. So this is not got to say that Akash is going to completely lock out all libraries, all the books of all rural India. But the fact is, it is going to not only help the rural India leapfrog, but would also help to reach out the electronic format and today the electronic knowledge to the rural students of India, thereby enhancing the cause of education.
Praveen Nigam, let me come to you again. Do you agree with that? I mean, do you think that the government is doing enough to provide traditional means of education, books and pencils and things like that, that they are spending so much money on technology?
What I would like to comment on this is very simple. I think you're absolutely right when you said that government can provide books and everything which is at a cheaper cost, but then who will teach them? Just the provision of books will not help.
I'm saying that's a fair point. So spend the money on teachers, teacher training. I mean, again...
Teachers, now with the computers or with the tablet, the best thing is, because the distant learning is picking up so fast, I think one teacher can address 1,000 students, which in any case, if it is one-on-one training or one-on-one teaching like any other classroom, you can't address more than 25, 30 students at a time. And the long distance learning is picking up India very fast just for the reason that there is one teacher and there are 500 students all over the place, and they are just connected with the teacher, and it becomes a interactive education for them, which I think is the key role which this tablet should play. I mean, to my mind, that's the whole objective.
Farooq Dondi, it sounds a seductive image on paper, a teacher in every classroom streaming live and providing educational material at much lower cost. Really, is that what's going to happen? Is that actually practically feasible? And let me break it down into a number of elements here. First of all, the supporting infrastructure. Does India have the capacity to deliver teachers into classrooms on this laptop computer with the backup technology that's required, the wireless capability, the telephony capability, the broadband capability?
Good question. Answer, absolutely not. I have witnessed teaching in the rural areas, in the poorer urban areas in my work as a journalist, and it's absolutely abysmal. There are two factors. One is that there aren't enough teachers trained. All sorts of people go into teaching who really haven't learnt very much themselves. And I'm not attacking the Indian teaching profession, which is, quite brave, quite poor, and quite hardworking. But also, there is the huge question of who is going to provide the curricular material. I now know that there are in Indian cities several businesses have been set up to translate prose, to translate written stuff into software. And the software educational industry is growing at a tremendous pace. But does it have, and I know that it doesn't, my question is rhetorical, does it have the kind of requisite people to provide information, good information on the right subjects, good educational methods, good educational techniques to advance the grammar of education? That we haven't developed. We're going for technology. You can see that, people say that India is a great mobile phone using country, but what do we use the mobile phones for? Has it really advanced the fate of the nation? I begin to doubt it. Also, I think that Akash will end up in the hands of a new and progressive middle-ranking elite who will learn from it, of course. It's a benefit, but it won't solve the basic problem of India's educational backwardness.
Pavan Duggal, let me put that straight to you. I mean, some fairly harsh criticism there.
I would tend to agree to that extent because, you see, launching a technology is one issue. Having it reaching out to the right hands is another. And the third issue is completely the implementation of the educational system in India. So at no point of time should one dream or think of that having Akash in hand is equivalent to India being educated. That's a very simplistic way of looking at things. I think we have to break it out in different segments. Yes, Akash, the tablet, is definitely going to be a game changer. A game changer which has never occurred earlier in the history of Indian educational system. A game changer which will help not only reach out education and knowledge to rural as also semi-rural students and schools, but more importantly would also help to connect the rural students and the rural sector to the internet, to the so-called educational format. However, it's no guarantee that how it's going to be distributed. In fact, I was talking a bit in the afternoon, and I felt that assuming at this kind of a price, the demand is going to be far more than the supply. And the bigger question is, Where is the demand going to be hoarded up? Who's going to ultimately land up getting it? Now, those are questions that are too hard to be answered right now. But at no point of time can we link the evolution or the development of a single tablet to educational empowerment and complete educational revolution in India. Well, that doesn't go hand in hand.
Let me put that one point to Praveen. I mean, what about the supply and demand equation? Has India got in place the back element of the production process, of the distribution process, to make it a success?
No, distribution process in India is pretty rugged. I mean, it's not about whether you'll be able to distribute the manufactured tablets. The thing is that, to my mind, the demand will be much more higher than the supplies that can happen, because they would have their manufacturing limitations in any which ways. So I think that the launch should see the number of bookings which should take care of the production for at least next 3 to 5 years.
All right. Farooq, you brought up the issue of the mobile phone, and to a large extent, India's mobile phone experiences has often been talked about, how successful it's been, how many people now use the mobile phone, how they've managed to sidestep an entire generation of wired technology and gone straight to wired. And in a way, it's made life easier for a lot of people. But you also raised the question, exactly how useful has that been and how much has it contributed to society? So can you actually answer that question? Has the mobile phone experience pointed the way forward in this tablet experience? And could we end up with a bunch of people with tablets and all they do use them for is watching movies and surfing magazines?
I think that one can make a small distinction. I don't know that the mobile phone has made life easier for people who use the internet and therefore have Blackberries and whatnot, and can do what they want with them, talk to their friends, pass on the gossip, organize a riot, that sort of thing. But I don't think it has enhanced Indian culture in any form whatsoever. The tablet could, of course, say you put a block on it so that you can't download Bollywood movies, then perhaps if you could only use it for educational purposes, that might be a good thing. But I don't know if one can actually make that sort of discrimination. It really depends on outside forces persuading people to use the tablets for advancement. There is a very, very huge push towards education in India. Everybody knows that to climb onto the bandwagon of the current success, at the lowest level, to be able to speak English and work in a call center, at the higher level, to try and get a scholarship to Stanford University and study, I don't know, business management or engineering, or go to MIT or whatever. There's a great push in the Indian population to get that education, whether it be in the professions or not. But of course, it only applies to a very small percentage of urban people. And when a rural child gets on that ladder and climbs it, it's news. It becomes headline news. It's not happening as a matter of course. So India's disparity might actually, financial disparity, social disparity, might actually be enhanced, exacerbated by the introduction of that kind of educational device. That doesn't mean that it should be stopped. It's welcome, I think.
That's an interesting point about the disparity in India may be worsened. But before we touch on that once more, I just want to go back to one of the phrases that you used a short while ago, and that is the potential for starting a riot. And I'll put this to you, Pavan, because I know that cyber crime is one of your areas of study. It's ironic to remember that one of the first countries to implement the one laptop per child program, which had the same theoretical ideas behind it. One of the first countries that took up that program was Libya. And I'm not saying that it was a cause of the Libyan uprising, but it's interesting how people now are talking about how technology is used for organizing riots. Do you think there's a possibility, Pavan, that the Indian government has gone down this route because it allows them a degree of control over the use of the technology, that maybe this helps them to monitor the activities online and maybe makes them calmer about the potential for organization for riot purposes?
Well, let me give this answer from a legal perspective. The government does not need to introduce a new laptop, a new tablet for the purposes of monitoring. Already we have in place something known as the Information Technology Act 2000. This has been amended after the Mumbai attacks in the year 2008. And after these new amendments, the Information Technology Act 2000 has given unprecedented powers of monitoring, of interception, and of blocking of electronic content that's passing through any communication device, computer system or network that's physically located in India. And that's being seen as part of a sovereign right to be exercised in the interest of sovereignty, integrity of India, security of the state, defense and public relations or for other purposes. So I think just introducing a tablet.
Very quickly, you're suggesting there that that degree of government involvement and monitoring of personal internet activity is a good thing, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying this is what has happened in our country. With the result, as I said, these are unprecedented powers that have been brought in the hands of the government, and there are not adequate checks and balances. Okay. So that's a separate discussion altogether. But merely saying that you're getting a new tablet, yes, if it's going to be subsidized by the government, the potentiality of control exists. And more importantly, the potentiality of monitoring and interception exists on a far bigger scale. Right. But the question is, should they want to monitor students? Will they be the most important headache of the government? I think that's the questions that only time will have the answer. Well,
students are often the starting point for a lot of this activity, but we'll put that aside. It's a good answer, and thank you for that. Let me come back to the question that Farooq raised, and I'll put it to you, Praveen. The issue of disparity, income disparity in India, already quite wide. Is this going to help narrow it or make it wider?
I think the whole objective of introducing this tablet is very clearly with the objective of dissemination of education to the rural, to the masses. And I think that if the intent with which it has been introduced and it works the way government wants it to, I would think that it should really narrow that gap. I mean, if the rural Indians are also educated, they also have opportunities which is only available to the urban Indians today. I don't see a reason why the disparity should increase. On the contrary, if the rural masses are more educated, they have more opportunities in terms of work, business, and everything else.
All right.
I would think that there is no reason why this disparity should widen any which ways.
Okay. Well,
if at all something can happen, I think it should really narrow that gap.
We are pretty much out of time. I just have time for one final comment, and I'll give it to you, Farooq, just to address again that point. Why do you think it's going to be so destructive? Well, not so destructive. Why do you think it's going to be a negative influence? And do you think the Indian government really has got its head around this aspect of this program?
I don't think it's going to be a negative influence at all. But I do think that it is going to increase the disparity.
Well, that is negative, isn't it?
Because we don't have in place a revolutionary program of education for the rural student. Nobody's thought of it. Nobody's invented such a curriculum. It would take a revolutionary program to say, learn this and therefore take up that position in the economics of India, in the society of India. We just haven't planned for that. And no number of tablets and mobile phones is going to do it.
Okay, actually, I do have time for one more question. So, Pavan, let me put it to you. As far as the whole process of implementing technology in India is concerned, I want to just go back to the technology aspect. This tablet itself is not going to win any awards as far as technology is concerned. But do you think India's approach to technology overall has been one that will enhance its economy?
The government is trying to subsidize, but at no point of time are we looking at any kind of, shall I say, awards and recognition. It just is our country's own indigenous manner of how it's trying to tackle its educational problems, of how to make the large chunk. Please understand, India is a huge e-commerce market. It's going to be a huge m-commerce market. Now that m-commerce market and the educational aspect will have to be somewhere married in between. And I think it's in this context that the government has chosen the tablet to be one of the ways. Clearly, it's not the overall superseding way, but is one of the many ways available to the government.
There, we will have to leave it. Pavan Duggal, thank you for your contribution from New Delhi. Thanks also from New Delhi, Praveen Nigam, and from London, Farooq Dondi joining us on the programme. Pleasure to talk to all three of you. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We always welcome comments and suggestions. Our email address, insidestory@aljazeera.net. But that's it for now. Bye-bye.